What's going on, guys? Belair here. I wanted to give you some thoughts of mine from the EWC, and I put it off long enough. I haven't put out a video in like a week and a half, but you know what? I'm not scared, all right? At least that's what I'm telling myself. Let's go ahead and talk about these teams. I thought it would be a good idea to give one word to encapsulate my thoughts, not only about their performance here, but kind of where they find themselves at this part of the season and headed into the impending World Championship. We are rocking with Atau Point of View, one of the most exciting, you know what, scrap that, the most exciting series from the entire event. Carmine Corps against Falcons. This was just perfect Rocket League. It was flowing, it had twists, it had turns, it had give and take from both sides, kind of coming alive. And the word that I have for Carmine Corps is a simple one. It's front runners. You know, as we head into the World Championship, there's some teams that peak a little too early. You know, we think about teams like Genji or Gentlemates who have won one a little too early and then have kind of slowed down, tempered, if you will, over the course of the season. Even somebody like Ultimates kind of feel like they're in this spot where they make the grand finals in Birmingham, and then they've really struggled to reach those same heights as Roas is going to just put one on their heads in transition. And it doesn't seem, excuse me, like Carmine Corps have done that. They start out the season dominant online, almost a perfect split. And then they go to Birmingham and win that one in tremendous fashion as well. A little bit of a hurdle there in Birmingham after another really, really great historic online performance in order to get to that LAN. And then here they are. They have bookended the season to this point with LAN victories. Very impressive. I didn't really think that anybody was going to be able to stave off what Falcons were putting down. And early in this series, it just looked like Falcons were finding that flow. And Carmine Corps were able to win, starting things off on the defensive end and then kind of building from there. They have the talent on this roster that you just know you can rely on them to produce magic offensively. And the way that they rotate and layer their defense, having Vatira as kind of that focal point, that anchor for this defense, and then Drali, just an absolute wizard on the goal line, especially. Something that really stood out to me over the course of this event. And Atau with an incredible fake there. He was having an awesome weekend as well. Him being the bright spot he was is kind of what gives this Carmine Corps team a different gear, and that is front runners. If Carmine Corps play the way that they did at this EWC, it's hard to imagine them losing 4 games out of 7. The only team who can beat them, at least with like a lot of certainty, the 2 teams that I think are kind of in a tier of their own. How about we put it that way? Because there's a lot of teams that could show up and win this. We're going to talk about a lot of them and their odds here in a bit. But the other elite team at this point in the season, when we're talking especially not only about the totality of the year, but also with this EWC, is Falcons. How's that for a long-winded transition? The word I have for them is breakneck. And that is just talking not only about their game-breaking ability to just totally take other teams out of what they are trying to do on both ends of the pitch, but specifically they keep such a high line that it can be really difficult to break out against them. I mean, we saw them just completely cut off the Ultimates water over the course of that series. I think they held them to only 2 or 3 goals in that 3-game sweep. For a team that loves to counter, they just couldn't break out. Not only that, but an Ultimates team who had beat Falcons earlier in the season. And not only breakneck because of that vice grip that they can put down on other teams, but also their speed. They outsped their opponent in every single matchup that they were a part of, and also won the boost battle as far as collection in every single matchup. The only exception to that is here against Carmine Corps, where they very slightly collected less small pads than Carmine, as we're seeing Atau rotate very tightly here over a grouping of small pads here in order to try and make a play on this ball. But Falcons play at an unbelievable pace. Not only does that show up on the stat sheet with a player like TRK, who is perfect at small pad collections, and this was a back and forth game that we've talked over for the most part, but let's rewatch this Drali goal, which ended up being a backbreaker for them, as he's just going to barely finesse one over the top of Rawas, who tries to make a tight turn on the ball in his own goal. But that breakneck pace is really, really difficult to keep up with, and we've seen a lot of teams struggle with it. Not only, of course, in their dominant win in Raleigh, where they were setting records offensively, but also with their pace. And as this game is going to come to a close, as Drali is going to get 2 goals to lift them to a match point here as we go to Neo Tokyo. I just think that pace is really, really hard for teams to keep up with, and it's something that is really hard to stop. I wouldn't even say that Carmine were able to stop it completely. It seemed like Falcons were getting a lot of opportunities that they liked. They were having to do them from deeper on the pitch than they typically like to, and having to beat 2, which is a recipe that doesn't yield success a lot of times against Carmine Core. But again, we've seen Falcons hit this point where they just look untouchable. And there could have been a little piece of this with EWC being on home soil that was a little nervy. Of course, we saw them win the FIFA E event. We've then seen them go on to win Raleigh. This is a great team in great form at this point in the season. So it seems like 2 strong horses here racing towards Lyon. Let's talk about some of the collection behind them that should be in contention as well. We're staying in the water here. Zen point of view going up against GK. God, this is a great series too. I feel like EWC, maybe it's recency bias, but I feel like we produced a lot of excellent storylines, great series over the course of this event in a way that might stack up a little bit better than the majors that we had this season. I don't know. I'll have to kind of step away from it a little bit and think about that a little more. But in the meantime, let's talk about something I do have strong opinions on, and those are these 2 teams on the pitch. Let's start off with where we are with Vitality. The word that I chose for them is legacy. I could have chosen a more negative word just because they've been very frustrating in how they have gone about this season, where they have just steamrolled people in groups / Swiss, whatever you want to call it. They go 3-0 in Raleigh, if I recall correctly. Gosh, did they go 3-0 in Birmingham too? I mean, this team have just run people over until it gets really important. Totally fell apart in Raleigh. Really, really disappointing into their EWC here, and I felt like Monkey Moon just did not have a good event. I had put out a tweet kind of talking about the way that things had ended with Zen, with this kind of double turnover at the death. Twitter, there's a word count. You can't get across all the perspective you're trying to give. It's not like I don't think Zen is the best player on this team and should not be in contention for the best player in the world. He is awesome. With that being said, in that moment, he turned the ball over twice, and it ended up costing them against the Falcons. It is what it is, you know. I felt like Exotic had a great first matchup against GK, where I did not feel like he had the same thing going on in the 3rd place matchup. And I'm trying to collect my thoughts and get him back to legacy here, because despite the fact that they have shown that they obviously have the talent to beat any team in the world, not only with the form that they can find at times, but also with the talent on this roster. I don't know. I don't know where the line is between giving them grace and just kind of, giving them a pass, because one part of it is like, oh, Monkey Moon is always able to turn it on in the World Championships. And then the other part of me is like, do you get to have that rope if you're just going to continually kind of fall apart in big moments? that we've seen all season long. And I don't know where the line between those is. I know I'm a little biased. It's tough for me to not, at the end of the day, like if you're going to distill it down to something, look at this roster and say, yeah, this team could win a world championship. I don't really see what the argument is with that. Um, but on the other side of things, they just haven't been able to get it done, and it seems like it's always somebody who's struggling and can't get things together. And with Carmine Corps and Falcons, if they lose, it's because the other team is just really on a worldie. Think about Twisted Minds and that reverse sweep that they had. Of course, Raleigh was a little shaken there. Or even Falcons losing, that was because it was Carmine Corps on the other side. And with Vitality, sometimes it just seems like Vitality beat themselves. And I don't really know ultimately where I'm going to land with that. Let's talk about GK. The word I chose for them was confidence. Oli had this tweet that I thought was one of the most, probably one of the things that'll stay with me the most, just moving forward season over season from this event. It was after they had won this series that we're watching right now, and is her name Seltzer? Who was casting? It was Seltzer and Fancy were their names, right? Who were the not the casters? You guys know what I mean. She had asked Oli, like, how did you guys get this done? And Oli said, it's all confidence. Rocket League is almost entirely confidence. I'm paraphrasing, but if you have that, you can beat anybody. And they showed that. Archie was incredible, I thought. Probably one of the better performances from him in recent memory. Probably one of the bright spots for his career when things are all said and done. And I don't know, hit the ball hard, be positioned well, and be fearless was kind of the recipe there. And they were just hitting the ball hard and putting it into funky spots that was just tough for the opponent to read. Like right here, Oli dropping this one down. I mean, there's a save, but like look at the scramble from Vitality. And then here's Joyo to just keep it in again for a second. And this one is just going to pinball out. There's two. Oli's going to take it. And this was just GK's recipe the whole time. Like, muck it up, put them in weird spots, play the underdog role, and just don't succumb to the situation and let the pressure kind of take down our opposition. I think that this might be a better event for them than the World Championship. Now that they have pulled off this result, oh my gosh, Sen. Now that they've pulled off this result, it's probably hard for them to come in and just go full confidence mode. Like now there's some expectations, and I think that could kind of slow them down a little bit once we get to Worlds. This one is about over here. I have so many teams to get through, and I have yapped so hard. So let me see if I can wrap this up in just a couple more games. Why don't we? Over point of view, this is from groups. Game 2 going up against Twisted Minds. We're going to talk about these two teams in a second. Let me talk about Dig real quick. The word I chose was aggregate because I'm only using one word and I'm not a cheater. But really what I'm trying to get across is that they're better than the sum of their parts. I was thinking about this team and kind of the structure of some of our elite rosters. And it's kind of like one shepherd of the offense and defense, you know, a table setter, somebody who's anchoring the team, one elite striker and a finisher, and then one player who is just like a wizard on the ball who can make very intuitive plays on both ends of the pitch. And that is the formula for teams like Carmine Corps. It's the formula for Vitality. It's the formula for Falcons. And it's not really the formula for Dignitas because you do have Stizzy, who is kind of this wizard type. Jorius is kind of a table setter, but he's more of like a defensive third man who's this striker and finisher and can do some stuff on the ball when he gets space. Jack is really kind of the fulcrum of the offense in a lot of ways. So they don't fit this traditional mold that I spent 1 minute kind of brainstorming. They're kind of their own deal. And also, despite the fact that, you know, I would assume most people in the world don't have the players on this roster as high cumulatively as a Carmine Corps or a Falcons or a Vitality or an NRG. Dignitas are still getting it done in a big way. And I think that GK was a nightmare matchup for them. I had tweeted about it, saying that I just felt like GK had the mental battle, especially after Birmingham, where they beat him in round 5, and it just seemed like they kind of like got in their heads a little bit, and then they get blown over. Um, Not a very strong warm up for them either. Who they beat? Genji and uh, Wild Card. I can't remember. That sounds right though. In fact, I'm almost certain it's right. Um, but yeah, better than the sum of their parts. Their belief can take them really far. I could see them making a top 4 in the World Championships. SSG, dangerous. Is there a world where SSG ends up being the team from NA that places the highest at Worlds? Obviously, the whole Vitality situation. I tweeted that it was super lame. They all apologized. You know, in the moment, it was really bad, and afterwards, still really bad. But like, if we're gonna be glass half full, which I think is always good, there's a very good possibility that that ended up being an awesome learning opportunity for them, and they'll be better players for it in the long run. I felt like they really turned it around with this win against Twisted Minds. They lost to Falcons, but like it wasn't like they got like absolutely demolished or anything. And I think that they're just going to be hungrier than ever, showing up with essentially no pressure, where other North American teams like NRG really need to show up with the season that they have had. Ultimates are struggling. Gen G have pressure that is kind of just put on by themselves, which I'm going to talk about here in a little bit. SSG could just kind of show up here and just hoop, and these guys are real good. Kofor had an excellent event. I felt the same way about Reveal too, just kind of being able to cut into plays and make stuff happen. And Scribbles is just consistently solid in a way that makes them very difficult to beat on the defensive end. Kofor was getting it done on both ends of the pitch over the course of this tournament. If he can play like that, I really feel like this team could have the best results in North America. Wouldn't be blown away despite a whiff on the ball there. Speaking of energy, we passed over them. The word I wrote was sluggish, not only in the way in which they kind of start. They seemingly always start a little slow, and I get that like Foot just play kind of weird. I want to talk about them a little bit in the future here, but it's not like they really dominated them either. You know, I guess that's not fair. They were fully in control the whole time, but you know, probably more of a fight than you're comfortable with, I would assume. And Vitality were looking great against them, but it's just kind of this accumulation of results for NRG this season where it's like, is there like a much better version waiting in here? They, of course, this is being harsh, but we're talking about greatness here. Should be a team that can contend for the World Championship. I still think that they can be, but they're kind of a rung below, possibly, 3 or 4 teams here, which is just bizarre given the talent that's on this roster. Um, I don't know. It's tough for me to kind of contextual or articulate rather my thoughts on this NRG roster just because they made top 4. They're the only team that made top 4 in both Raleigh and Birmingham. They've dominated North America, and yet they still just, isn't there a piece of you when you watch where you're like, this is like 80% of NRG, and if it was one event, maybe it's like, just everybody has one of those. But I feel like it's been 3 events where it's just kind of, they've had to come online to kind of save themselves time and time again. And it makes me really nervous. So as Kofor is going to drop a hat trick here on perfect shooting, let's see if we can get through the rest of our teams here in one more game. So this isn't a slog of a video. Game 2 of the win and you're in cheese point of view between Gen G and Team Secret. Gen G, I'm gonna be a little harsh, and it comes from a place of love. Um, the word that I wrote down for this team was complacent. Not complacent with the results. Clearly, they are not. Greg put out a very long statement about this. Cheese said in the kind of opening pieces of the tournament that they were here to prove something. Complacent with, comfortable with where the results kind of the pocket of space in which they occupy in the RLCS. And what I mean when I say that is this is a team that goes game 5 all the time. It's a team that goes round 5 all the time. And just to encapsulate this, let's just look at Magic Bear's results. Not because of Magic Bear, but because, the general core of this team, him and Raw Greg, pieces have come and gone. This core of Greg and Magic Bear in the, 5 or 6 S tier events that they have gone to have been a top, just outside of the top 8 every single time. They've been like 9th through 12th every single time. Not only RLCS, FIFA E, everything. And I think that has to change for this team. I think that it could change and should change for this team. And I think that they should expect better of themselves. Greg essentially said this in his tweet. But I would look at this EWC as like a no more. Like, this ends now. We can beat teams like Team Secret, despite being a very good Team Secret, who we'll talk about in a second. But I would be mentally trying to come into this last chance qualifier here for Worlds and just look at the ex-Corinthians roster, which is a very good team, but is not as good as Gen G, and stare down the other end of the bracket, which is going to be, I can't think of who is on the other side that they would play into. What is it, like Foot, I think? In any case, look at those teams and just be like, we're going to bury these rosters. I think they have the talent to do it, and I think that they should look to show it here. Speaking of Team Secret, I wrote underdog. Gosh, this team is good. Mata's been a revelation. Swift is excellent. KV1 is just a land boy. He has the experience at this point, and he has kind of shed that early in his career, like, is just going to play down underneath all of the competition that he is up against. Team Secret are a factor, and when we get to the World Championship, there could come a time where they end up eliminating one of the favorites, and it's just a story. Ultimates. I put listless. I don't know what this team is or where they're going. First Killer is so gosh darn good, but I feel like this has been a season where I've been longing for more from LJ. Chronic has been feast or famine, and I don't know. This team just doesn't feel that comfortable at this point in time. Twisted Minds. I put variance. Another team that's been up and down. I rewatched the SSG matchup before I recorded this while I was eating homemade tacos for dinner, and it seemed like Naupo was, I don't know, trying to force the issue a little bit. Like, he wasn't perfect. He was still getting great plays on the ball. He just has to make everything happen for that roster sometimes. And if you really want to make sure you can convert on a couple of goals, just test the backboard really hard in awkward positions when Rise is back there, because he got burnt a couple of times in that series, and it's something that I've noticed in a couple of series and pointed out in videos prior from this season. Furia, I put Crossroads. This team's in a weird spot where they're trying to adjust their play style according to their coach, STL, aka Mateus, and I think an adjustment in play style is what they'll have to do if they want to be one of these top 4 teams. But at the same point, I think if they just kind of played like themselves and played confidence, they would probably have a higher floor, if that makes sense. Trying to fit this play style does not look like they're comfortable and should be adjusted. I think if you really want to play at your highest peak, Yan has to be flowing and be very, very comfortable. Wild card, I put enigmatic. I do not know what to make of this team. The decals are funny. More teams should do it when you have Bacchus mod. TSM, I put rusty. Lockie had even said that he had not grinded a bunch before coming into EWC. Seems weird. They probably didn't have high expectations for themselves given the teams that they were in the field against. Virtus Pro, I put beatable. There's some plays that Sosa and Sphinx can make on the ball that really wow me, and I don't know. I love Catalysm. Um, the first team that I really loved, like really loved, was that Evil Geniuses roster with Catalysm, Rizex, and Ivan. So he holds a special spot in my heart. It's just tough to win with him on the roster. He is an excellent player, but when we're talking about this level of competition, I think it gets a little hairy. And finally, foot are just difficult, man. I think about my brother plays Rocket League here and there, um, and he's not as high of a skill level as I have. So in the past, it's not much of a gap, but it's a gap to where it's like just enough to where you can't play together. I think he's like gold 3, and I'm like low champ. And so I've been like, oh, I'll make like a burner account so we can play together. And it's actually kind of difficult to play down. Like we lose quite a bit because you get used to this certain speed and rotation and style of the level that you play at. And I think when you play foot, they just like they play a little more methodical and slower, and their rotations are a little weird, and they just take you out of your stuff. And it seemed like they made NRG really uncomfortable. Even it seemed like Virtus Pro they made uncomfortable and beat them. Foot, like everybody hates them. It's not like I'm going to be cheerleading for what they're doing. I think that it's wrong within the region. That's a much larger discussion that we won't have now. But they're difficult to play, man, and they're good. And they can pop, especially Torres is somebody that I really like. But Leoro has shown up in the last 2 tournaments as well. And VK is kind of their focal point. So that's all of my teams. Ran them through. What do you guys think? Is there a team that there's a word that really sticks out to you? I would love to hear your explanation in the comments below. We can talk about it. And the rust is now shaken off. If you made it this far into the video, maybe you are a big fan of the content. So in short, I'll just say that it's tough to it's difficult to sometimes meet expectations that you want to set for yourself, the best possible version of yourself that you can see. And I could make videos every day and really take this seriously, and like maybe make a career out of this. And when you're not doing that, you actually can dig yourself into a hole where you end up getting really hard on yourself and very, very critical of what you're trying to do. And that's what I've been overcoming. I didn't put out a video in a little bit, and then it just compounded and made it harder and harder every day. But some people reached out that made me want to stop that in its tracks. And also, it's important to just hold yourself accountable. So even if this wasn't the perfect video that I wanted to put out, you gotta rip off the band-aid sometimes and keep it rolling. So excited for Worlds. Content will flow. Thank you guys as always for giving me some of your time, and until next time, guys, take it easy.